gonna rip my heart out, I'm sure. This book is laced with something, I swear. I've seen a lot of people sob. Hey everyone, if you're new here, my name's Lottie, and if you're a subscriber, welcome back to my channel. This week, I've decided to take on a very emotionally questionable reading challenge. I'm spending the entire week reading nothing but sad books. Now, I usually don't go out of my way to emotionally wreck myself, but I had several books on my TBR this month that I've heard are major tearjerkers, so I thought we could just go on a little bender and have a big cry fest. And this is kind of the last hurrah for winter, guys. I'm so excited for spring soon. I cannot wait for daylight savings. But for now, we're in our sad girl era. Let's get into it. I'm gonna timestamp out the different portions of the reading vlog, so if you're just here for one book, feel free to skip around, come back, whatever, you do you. Okay, so we're actually gonna kick off this reading vlog with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I've heard nothing but good things. It's time that I read it. I have to read it before winter's over. This book actually is also on Kindle Unlimited, so I have a free version of the ebook, the audiobook, and the physical copy, so we are locked and ready to go. This book is technically in the genre of fantasy, but I think it's a little bit more like historical fiction and like magical realism. Which yeah, I'm sure it kind of is fantasy, but it's not like ACOTAR, you know, there's not fairies or anything. Basically, this book starts off in 1714 France with a young girl named Addie who is desperate for her freedom. She doesn't want to get married. She wants to travel the world and be independent. So Addie makes a desperate deal with the devil to live forever in exchange for her soul. Kind of crazy. So I think this book really explores immortality and like the beauty of that, but also the grief of it. Oh, and there's a catch. No one can ever remember her. So as soon as she parts ways from someone new that she meets, they forget her. Real conundrum, because what's the point in living life forever if you don't get to, have any relationships or connections with the people around you? So I think that's kind of the basic setup. But what's interesting is that Addie actually in 2014 meets someone who finally remembers her, which changes everything. So spanning 300 years, we got a lot of history kind of to get through. I like the kind of combination though of magical realism, historical fiction, and just general lit fic. So I'm excited to dive in. I'm gonna read for the next few hours and I'll give you my first impressions. I just made it to part 2 in the book. I want to look and see how many parts total there are. Stand by. There's 7 parts in the book. That makes a ton of sense because Addie has 7 freckles, I think, on her face. And then there's also on the dust jacket 7 stars that make up this constellation. And I think this is supposed to be the pattern of the freckles on her face, maybe. So interested to see how 7 just continues to play a role in the book in general. But yeah, anyways, I wanted to give first impressions since I hit the end of part 1. I'm just about on page 90 out of 440. I feel like all of part 1 was kind of just set up. I think with a story like this, you have to have a really strong main character, and Addie so far is very captivating. I feel like she has a really strong voice. There are just things in this book, I think they're making it longer than maybe it needs to be because we're just looking at things from a lot of different angles, but it's really nice writing. And also because Addie has no one to talk to, it really makes sense for her character that she's wanting to yap with us in the book. I think that's my only question mark is I'm curious what this book would look like if it were first person, but I do think it also makes sense that because she can't, that it is third. This all happens when she's 23, which I also really like that that's the age that she turns immortal, because I think that's a really interesting age to explore immortality from, I guess. I'm glad she's not 16 or something like that. So yeah, overall, I feel so far so good. I've never read anything from this author, and I know V.E. Schwab has a lot of popular titles. I've actually got dinner plans, so I have to head out, but I'm sure I'll be yapping and giving more updates as I go. All right, besties, it's been several days since I've last updated you. Today is Tuesday, and I started this book on Friday, and I'm 40% of the way through, so I'm reading very slow. It's not that I'm reading slow, actually, it's just that I haven't had much time to read the past few days. So So over the weekend, I went to Love Y'all Romance Book Festival in Atlanta and I filmed a vlog of that. So I was literally there from like 9 to 5 Saturday and Sunday, and I had practically zero free time over the weekend to actually read. So that definitely set me back a little. And then Sunday night and Monday night, last night after work, I was just editing that vlog and I got that up today. So I like hyper fixated on getting that vlog edited. Also started a bookstagram today randomly. I just kind of was like, you know what? Sure. So I made an Instagram account just for bookish stuff. So if you want to follow me on there, I'd love to have you. It's just at bookloverlottie. So my bookstagram and my book talk are both bookloverlottie. But let's get back to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue because this book is so good, you guys. I'm about 40% of the way through the book. I finished part 2. I know last time I updated you, I just finished part 1. The writing is so incredible. Like, it's just gorgeous. It's also dual timeline. I don't know if I ever said that. It kind of flows back and forth. So one timeline is like the progression of Addie's immortality starting in 1714. And the other timeline is Addie in like, I think it's present day, just 2014. This book was published, I think, in like 2020 though. So you're kind of getting to see the contrast between Addie freshly becoming immortal and all of the struggles with that, and then 300 years later and her acceptance of a lot of the loneliness. And it's a really interesting contrast to split back and forth, and it's definitely helping to hold my attention. So I really like that. The devil she made the deal with, Luke, comes and like visits her every year and is trying to get her to like give up and sacrifice her soul to him, I guess. I'm just curious like what the dynamic is and like what the game plan is between Addie and Luke long term. Are we going enemies to lovers? Like, I don't know. I'm just curious because I feel like I, as a reader, I'm gonna have a really hard time ever feeling bad for Luke, and I'm curious to see like where that plotline's going. Like, he's evil, he's the devil, and so like if he has a redemption arc as the devil, I don't know. So I'm going to be laying right here all night, just binge reading this book. I just made it to part 4. Oh my God. The cliffhanger at the end of part 3. I'm gagged. Basically, we got a hint as to why Henry can remember Addie, and I need to know more, so we're gonna continue. It's more of like a concept study. Like, it's like, how does this concept play out with this person and what are the feelings that they're feeling? And it's kind of exploring like themes of just like humanity and personhood. And I don't necessarily feel like I know Addie like so well. There's still a lot to her that is an enigma to me, but I am really enjoying like the exploration of what does it mean to be remembered or forgotten, like these larger themes. And so that I feel like is more what this book is than like a character study. Okay, enough talking. I'm gonna get back to reading. Okay, so I just made it to part 5. I need to start my workday now, but I definitely want to finish the book today. One thing about the book that has kind of surprised me so far is that I kind of thought we were going to get a little bit more from Addie throughout some of the past chapters of like her going through and like exploring history throughout the 300 years she's been alive and like lessons learned and like growth from her through that. And I feel like she's really just kind of stayed in France for the majority of the 1700s so far. And I guess I'm just wishing that this book pushed the boundaries a little bit more on like some of the things that Addie like goes and does or learns about in the past. But I don't know, I guess I'm just not feeling like I know Addie that well. To me, Addie is more like a device to tell this story about humanity. I have not come close to shedding a tear yet, and I wouldn't say it's like been an overtly sad book. I'm interested to see how I feel when we get to the end because I've seen a lot of people sob. It is just a little bit after 5 and I finish up with work for the day, so I am ready to sit here and finish this book. I might grab my Kindle in a bit, but I'm gonna start with the physical book. My Kindle is charging right now. I have my little after work Diet Coke that I wanted to have. It only has like 30 grams of caffeine, so nothing too crazy, but it's kind of nice sometimes to have like a little boost when I'm reading after work because sometimes my brain is just a little sleepy from working all day, and I'm gonna have this while we keep reading. It's so good.
The way Addie and the devil have like some of the best banter, like why am I shipping Addie and the devil more than I'm shipping Addie with the guy who can remember her, Henry? Luke? Yeah, he's got banter.
Okay, it's been an hour and I just switched to the Kindle. It's 6:15 because it's gotten dark now. But yeah, no tears have been shed yet. Wow, that's it. I feel like this vlog is already flopping because I did not shed one tear. I heard everyone sobs at the end of that book. I do cry like when reading. I'm like kind of disappointed that I didn't cry because I wanted it to be a 5-star. I feel like immediate like slight disappointment because I think what it is, guys, is kind of what I was saying. I didn't feel that connected to the characters. And even though the writing was gorgeous and I really thought the story was so creative, something just kept me from really identifying with the characters. And maybe I had too high of expectations. I think sometimes, you know, books can just hit you when you least expect it. And that's when you sob. Like that's what happened to me with Remarkably Bright Creatures, I think. Like I wasn't expecting to sob and then all of a sudden I was just like, oh my God. So maybe I had too high expectations. Okay, I'm gonna sit on my rating. I think I'm gonna wait and give my ratings for all of the books I read at the end of the vlog because I need to sit on my rating for this for a second. I don't think it's a 5-star for me, but I did really, really like this book and I would recommend it. I think it's a great book. So that's my initial review after just finishing The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I'm probably gonna sit here and watch a bunch of TikToks about this book because that's always my happy reward when I finish a book. I may go ahead and start another book tonight. I may not. We'll see. Okay, it's a new day and I made a coffee and I started a new book last night. And that book was Beartown. This is my first book from Frederick Bachman and I've been meaning to read this for literal months now. And it has a really like winter vibe to it. So I definitely wanted to read it before the end of February, before we start getting into the warmer spring months. So this is definitely a like highly anticipated one for me. I actually read like 100 pages last night. So this book is laced with something, I swear. I'm on page 102, chapter 14, and there's about 400 pages. So I'm about 25% of the way through already. If you didn't know, this book is set in a fictional small town called Beartown, basically just like a freezing cold, remote small town. And there's really not much going on in Beartown. They're kind of struggling with their economy, with tourism, jobs, like it's not looking good. So the only thing that kind of gives this town a bit of character, a bit of hope is ice hockey. And the town's junior ice hockey team is about to compete in the national semifinals. And basically the entire town is resting all of their hopes and dreams on these like 15, 16, 17-year-old boys. So, you know, of course that's going to be a recipe for success, right? And basically under all of that pressure and that burden, the semifinal ice hockey match becomes the catalyst for a violent act that leaves the town in turmoil. So I haven't gotten to that part yet of it all. I've just kind of been reading and getting to know all the different characters. So where I stopped last night, it's like the morning of the semifinal match. What seems like kind of a mundane setting or topic is far from it. And the writing is just so human. It's really well done, but it's not like lush or flowery. It's very to the point and in a way that's like really bingeable. So that is my Beartown update. I'm really excited about this book. I'm feeling good feelings and good vibes about it. I mean, it's gonna rip my heart out, I'm sure, but I'm excited for it to do so. Hey guys, I wrapped up with work and I have just been reading Beartown ever since. Two things I wanted to say. I feel like in this book, the word bear is used a lot in really creative ways because it's Beartown, obviously, but things will be said like their bare chests, like the old men who are obsessed with the hockey will take their shirts off, their bare chests exposed, whatever. Or there'll be a moment like, oh, he couldn't bear it, or bearing down, like different phrases like that with bear that I notice that are pretty frequent throughout the writing. And I think that's really creative and interesting, the way that the word bear is used throughout the story. So that's one thing I wanted to note. The other thing I wanted to note is that the fictional town of Beartown is definitely set in Sweden. They referenced like Swedish currency. And I mean, I should have known because it's originally translated from Swedish. If you're someone who has a hard time keeping up with a lot of different characters, I would definitely recommend going into this book and getting your notes app out and like making a few notes about each of the characters as you go to help keep your mind straight, at least for the first little bit. So I'd say there's at least 10, if not closer to 18 or 20 different people in the orbit that you're keeping up with. But I'm still really enjoying it. And I will say the point of the book that I'm in, if you've read this, they just had the semifinal game. So I know the outcome and I'm very interested to see what comes next because I have a feeling that things are about to get interesting. So I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to try to get probably like halfway tonight or so. Go. Book is unfortunately really good but really sad. Let's just say a young girl is traumatized, and I think it's something that a lot of girls unfortunately have experience with, and it's just heartbreaking to read about. And that's really all I have to say at this point. I'm just gonna binge read this book that is actually stomping on my entire heart and soul. This is the kind of small town book though that like I can't put down, more so than like a small town romance, just because like the drama of the small town is just so heightened. We're literally on page 250 and now I've made a new connection of like that this person is like this person's mom, and I'm like, wait a minute. Guys, I just want to say Bobo. Like I'm gonna cry thinking about Bobo, but Bobo and Amit, I'm just like, protect them at all costs. Also Benji, like he is so interesting to read about. And of course I love Maya and Anna, their friendship. And just like all of the parents, it's so good, guys. Okay, I'm gonna keep reading. Why did no one tell me this book is on Kindle Unlimited? I'm on chapter 35 and I'm just now realizing it's on Kindle Unlimited. Right. Okay. We're gonna be getting extra cozy for the rest of the night. This book is just like, my heart is just, I feel like I relate to and feel deeply with a lot of these characters. And I hate a lot of them at times, but I also understand them. And a lot of the chapters start with kind of just like a statement. So this one says, hate can be a deeply stimulating emotion. The world becomes so much easier to understand and much less terrifying if you divide everything and everyone into friends and enemies. We and they. Good and evil. The easiest way to unite a group isn't through love, because love is hard. It makes demands. Hate is simple. And then it goes into like the plot, right? It has these larger themes around like why people are acting the way they act. So good. Okay, I finished Beartown by Frederick Bachman. It's 12:21 a.m. I don't have one issue with this book. That's my review. Like, wow. And it really set up. There are like 2 more books in this series, which I feel like this book can also definitely just be read as a standalone. Like you don't have to keep reading the series, but everyone who has read the full trilogy says that it's definitely worth continuing. So I definitely am interested in reading the others. I didn't realize they were all on Kindle Unlimited. So I may go ahead and start the next one like sometime soon. I want to be better this year about finishing series soon after I start them. Especially if they're already completed series. I don't want to like forget. There's so many characters. I don't want to forget everyone's names and stuff. I didn't have a physical emotional reaction. Like I wasn't sobbing at any point. There were like singular tears that would be shed. This is definitely just a heavier story though, and it's a lot to take in. Definitely consider reading this soon. It's set in March for the most part. So if you want something on your March TBR, definitely still a good time to pick it up if you've been wanting to, but definitely check the trigger warnings. We have one more book to go in this reading vlog, so I'm gonna power through. I'm probably not gonna start another book tonight. I might read like one chapter of a new book tonight. We'll see. I know I'm gonna love The Nightingale. It's definitely one I've been kind of putting off. So I just feel like a historical fiction just would be like a different kind of emotional roller coaster, it might be the time. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, I started The Nightingale. I am about 100 pages in. It's been a few days. I am really enjoying The Nightingale so far. I actually have been also listening to the audiobook a little bit because it was free through Hoopla, so I'm listening through my library. I will say too, I'm not a huge historical fiction person. I have nothing against historical fiction, but I read All the Light We Cannot See at the end of 2022, and that just like was not a favorite book for me. I know so many people love that book, but for whatever reason, I just really struggled with it. And so I think I just was kind of hesitant about another World War II story. But honestly, having read that one, I feel like I'm already kind of exposed to certain things about World War II historical fiction that I'm like more aware of now. And it's like anytime you're reading the first of a genre is probably going to be a little bit like of a learning experience. And I feel like better prepared reading this, having read that, if that makes sense. But this is also probably a better like starter book for historical fiction than that one was. I read Firefly Lane back in August, and that was one of my favorite books of 2024. So I have high hopes for Miss Kristen Hanna. I realized I forgot to put my bookmark in, but I knew what chapter I was on. There's just something about Kristen Hanna's writing that I really connect with. And I definitely think that she is a great person to start with if you're trying to get into historical fiction. A little bit about this book. It's about two sisters, and we get a chapter in the very first chapter of like an old woman reflecting on her life. And I'm trying to figure out which sister that is, because I think that that is going to be one of the two sisters, and then one of the other sisters will probably die, just given how sad everyone says this book is. It's not a spoiler because I have no idea. It's just like you could read the first chapter and make that conclusion as well. So Vian, who's the older sister, and Isabel, who's the younger sister. Vian is honestly, they kind of remind me of like Scarlett and Tella's dynamic in Caraval, if you've read that. Not really, but like, you know, the older sister who like does as she's told, falls in line, kind of takes a more traditional path. And then the younger sister who's just like, the world is my oyster, very independent thinker, that kind of vibe. So yeah, Vian is 4 years older. I want to say she's like 22. She has a daughter named Sophie. And then we have Isabel, who is 18. Isabel honestly kind of reminds me of, in The Sound of Music, the main character Maria, who the whole song, How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria, that feels like Isabel because she keeps getting kicked out of like finishing schools. She just kind of marches to the beat of her own drum, and I really love Isabel. She is so much fun to read about to me. But once again, I'm kind of seeing the parallel that I saw in Firefly Lane, where I'm starting to see these two sisters living such different lives, but they both have their strengths and weaknesses, right? So like, even though Isabel is so much fun to read about and follow because she just has like all this personality and spunk, and she like hates the Nazis, and she's like, wants to go fight in the war and help. But then Vian has a lot more to lose because she has a daughter she has to care for. She can't just like go fight in the war. And like these softer skills and like softer life is also really important, really valuable. And like, it doesn't diminish Vian as a person. She's just trying to survive. But it's really interesting to see their dynamic as sisters and the choices that they make. There have been some incredible quotes so far. I have been tabbing up the book. It's a book where I pick it up and I don't want to put it back down. It's hard to just like read a chapter at a time. It's one that like I'm definitely gonna binge. I need to run some errands, so I'm probably gonna put the audiobook on while I do that. Hey guys, I think it's been 2 days since I talked to you. Question mark? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I just wrapped up with work for today, and I'm a little bit over halfway through with The Nightingale. To me, what makes or breaks a story in general is just characters and character development. First of all, I'm a seasonal reader. I'm a mood reader, and to read a book about World War II in February, the like most depressing month of the year, it just feels right. It's just hitting, you know? And then beyond being a huge like seasonal mood reader, I am all about character development. I really love a character study, and beyond that, I want there to be growth. And this book has that. And it really makes you think about the choices you would make in their positions. And I think reading this right now, given the political climate, has definitely caused me to be more reflective. Also, Isabel, I'm obsessed with her. It's kind of like a project that Isabel's working on, and Isabel's plotline is just like fascinating to me. I'm also interested in some of the side characters involved with her plotline and like how they're gonna come back. I'm also curious what's gonna happen with Vian and her bestie Rachel. I've just been like listening to this and reading it nonstop over the past few days. I am excited to read a decent chunk more tonight. I'd love to get close to finishing it tonight if I could. Kristen Hannah, you are sick and twisted for chapter 22. Sick and twisted. Hi guys, I'm having my evening yasso bar. This is the cookies and cream yasso bar. If yasso bar has 0 fans, I am dead. I literally live for my evening yasso bar, but I thought I'd update you because I am switching locations. I decided it was time to break for my yasso bar. I just was like tired of being in the office. Also, the lighting in the office, it's like very cozy mood lighting, but when I'm reading a physical book, honestly, these lamps are better. I'm on chapter 29, 70% of the way through the book now. So I still have less than 200 pages now. I honestly kind of stopped annotating because I got lazy. So that's on me.
Well,
Is 12:15 a.m. on a school night, mind you, and I just finished the Nightingale. I have a lot of thoughts. I understand. I get why this book is so popular. I'm also kind of numb the way at the end of the book, if you've read this book, that there is a lot of numbness. I was definitely feeling that, and I feel almost like guilty that I didn't have more of like a visceral physical reaction to some of the atrocities that were taking place, especially towards the end of the book. But I was just like numb. So there's that. I did get a bit emotional in the very last chapter. We had our final chapter in the like now timeline. Whew. That was a tearjerker, but I think I'm going to sleep on it and I'll give final thoughts on all the books in the morning. But overall, beautiful story. I thought we could debrief about the Nightingale. I felt kind of guilty reading some of the like atrocious things that happened at the end of the book and not crying. Like I just was numb. And that's the best way to describe it. And I think that's a totally valid reaction to have when reading some of the horrors that go on in this book. I don't think in order to be like moved by the writing or to have it stick with you, you have to sob. If anything, I feel like it was just so harrowing. We all process and experience books and reading differently. And so I think I was just putting a little bit of like, not pressure, but just expectation on this book that it was gonna, you know, be a big sob fest. But I also don't want to like think too much into that and let it affect how I think about the book, because it really didn't. But I just wanted to acknowledge that I was kind of like processing all of that. And I think just being reconfronted with like the daily horrors that everyone went through during the war and the Holocaust left me like in awe of like human strength and like human evil and like what people are capable of. I think the main thing for me that brought this down to 4.5 instead of a 5 was just kind of the way that it ended. I wouldn't change the ending per se, but I think for me, some of the passages that stood out to me the most were some of the conversations that Vianne had with the head mother nun. These conversations around good versus evil, right versus wrong, and when that's in conflict with what you need to do to protect yourself or your family. I think I just felt like this very last paragraph, I think I just wished, and I think it would have hit me harder if there was like a little bit more of like a reflection on some of like those choices. Like I kind of think if there had just been a little more commentary on that at the very end of the book, I think I just would have preferred that. So that's what led me to a 4.5. But this book was just absolutely gorgeous and will definitely stick with me for forever. So if this is your favorite book, it's a good choice. I get you. All right, let's do a quick recap on all the books I read in today's vlog and how I feel emotionally checking out of this week. First up, I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I was really excited because this is my first V.E. Schwab book and I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really good book. I think I ended up giving this just a solid 4 stars. I can totally understand why this is some people's favorite book, and it definitely was like an emotional, reflective story. I think the thing that sticks out to me the most about this book is just the gorgeous prose, and that is, I feel like this book's strength more so than like the characters or the character development. And I think that is kind of the piece that was missing a little bit for me. Overall, it's a really great story though. I think the concept is really cool. For me, this one wasn't super sad. It was, I think, a bit more like reflective, but that might have just been my experience. I thought this was a good one to like warm us up this week, not to start with like a super heavy hitter. Then I read Beartown by Frederick Bachman. This was my first ever Frederick Bachman read and was so excited to be introduced to his writing. This was probably my favorite book of the vlog. It's hard to choose between Beartown and the Nightingale, honestly, but I think Beartown edges out the Nightingale for me personally, just slightly. I just really connected with this story and with some of the commentary and all of the characters. This story was just something unlike anything I'd really ever read before, and that's why it stood out to me the most. The line at the top on the cover says, "Packed with wise insights into the human experience," and I just think that sums up Beartown to a T, and I am eager to continue the rest of the series. So if you've read the rest of the series, let me know what you think in the comments. I need you guys to get on me about finishing the series because that's one of my goals this year. I absolutely love this. Just speechless, honestly. 5 stars for me. I tabbed it up. This one will stick with me for a long time. And finally, I know we just talked about the Nightingale, so I'll keep this quick. The fact that it's going to be a movie, I'm so sad. If I could pre-order tickets to the movie, I would. I think as someone who sometimes struggles with, especially like wartime historical fiction, this was so good. I'm feeling more open to historical fiction as a genre after reading this, and this is just harrowing. It's about war, love, sisterhood, and history, and it's important. I definitely think with everything going on in the world I'm getting emotional. I just think with everything going on in the world right now, it's really important that we don't forget things that happened in the past. Really sitting with it and like taking time is important. So everyone should read this. I think emotionally checking out of this reading okay, I've got to compose myself. I think emotionally checking out of this week's reading vlog, I'm feeling nourished. I think reading books that are known to be emotional or sad or heavy feel daunting. I definitely feel that way. But I think this week has been really helpful for me to inspire and challenge me to pick up those heavy hitter books more often because these are all 4 and 5 star reads for me. They had something to say and they're gonna stick with me. Those are just my favorite kinds of books. And granted, reading them back to back, I do think can feel like a lot. I think it's just a good reminder for me to like work these kinds of books in. So I'm feeling accomplished and I'm feeling really excited about my reading month this month in general, just in February. I feel like I've had so many standout reads and a lot of it is thanks to this video because these books they wowed me. If you made it this far in the video, comment down below with the sad emoji so I can know who made it to the end. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I put out new reading vlogs, TBR videos, Kindle tips, all that good stuff on my channel every week. So I would love to have you stick around. And with all that being said, I think that's gonna be it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching and I will see you very soon in another one. Bye.